top creators, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders, and I do everything I can to unlock their brains with the goal of helping you live your dreams in career, in hobby, and in life. My guest today is a serial entrepreneur. He's founded a couple companies, one of which I know you will know, called Moz. It revolutionized SEO back in the day. He's also been 30 under 30 for Business Week's top entrepreneurs, and he's got two new things to talk with us about today. One new company called SparkToro, and the second, a new book that just dropped. My guest today is Rand Fishkin in the house.
Great to see you, man.
This has literally been more than a year in the making, and I spend a good bit of time in Seattle, mostly San Francisco, but you're here, and it's taken this long. You're a busy guy.
I guess, yeah, I'm on the road a lot.
Yeah, and building companies and writing books, of course.
Yeah, and among other things, trying to be a good husband to my wife, and trying to be a good person to the world.
It's a full-time job these days, right? The world needs great people to step up.
More than ever.
Well, I'm super happy to have you on the show. And one of the things that I was most interested in your new company, that you've started something is a big deal in the entrepreneurial community in Seattle. I know you've got a lot of very popular backers. Kudos to your new round.
Oh, thank you.
But I was interested in the mission and the vision that you have for that company, because the audience that we have tuning into the show, by and large, they're trying to build their own audience, whether it's for a company or as individuals. And it's a huge part of building business today online. And my understanding is that's what SparkToro is all about, is helping people and companies find where their tribe hangs out online.
That's exactly right.
Cool.
Yeah. So if you're, let's say you're an artist, maybe you're creating a new video game or a new tabletop game or something like this, you might say, gosh, one of the challenges I have is that there's not a lot of people searching for, okay, what's the new game coming out in this field?
Sure.
That just doesn't get a ton of interest and attention passively or actively.
Yeah.
People might be interested passively. They might say, oh, I would love to find out about it. But in order for them to find out about it, you have to be in the places where they hang out.
Yeah.
And discovering those audiences, if you aren't a sort of highly knowledgeable, well-networked member of that community already, is a pain. I'm very unfamiliar with the world of video games, but not that. I love playing, but
sure.
I would have no idea. If you and I launched a new game tomorrow, I would have no idea where to go promote that.
Yeah.
I don't know who we should be talking to, or what podcast we should try to get on, or what YouTube channel we should try and be on, or
who should you collab with? What should you?
Is GameSpot still popular? I don't know. It was when I was a teenager.
Right.
So all those kinds of questions are really tough to answer. And so SparkToro is trying to build this massive database of, here are all these publications and sources and people that influence these given audiences. And if you want to discover who influences your audience, you can just search, right? You can say, okay, tabletop games or interior designers. And you can get back a list of the places that are most paid attention to by those groups. Or you could alternatively say, I can't really describe my audience, but I know that they all follow this person on Twitter.
Yep.
So give me that Twitter username, and I'll tell you, people who follow this person also pay attention to this podcast.
It's amazing to me that this tool doesn't exist.
How does it not exist?
Yeah, totally. It doesn't. It's
I'm
crazy.
totally with you. So when I watched people, doing this, which is something you do as an entrepreneur, right? You try and watch your customers or potential customers do the work that you're going to help them with.
Yeah.
And when I watched, it was literally people go to Google, open up an Excel spreadsheet, and then copy, paste.
Here's the number of followings. Here's other people that they've followed that I know.
Yeah. Here's how much traffic, SimilarWeb estimates their blog gets. Yeah. Oh my God, you're kidding me. Yeah. You have to do this by hand.
Let the machines do it.
Oh, yeah, of course. The only thing that, does anything like this is some of the PR databases out there, right, for journalists. Mm-hmm. And I had this it's not just journalists who influence the world anymore.
Right.
What about the rest of So yes, that's where SparkToro comes from.
So I want to put a pin in SparkToro because I think that's fascinating. It's huge for the audience. That is
but it's
paying
also
attention.
a year away from existing.
Yeah, that's fair. You just launched you just raised your new round. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about raising the round and how you went a very alternative route.
Yeah.
And I also want to talk about your new book, Lost and Founder.
Absolutely.
So that's the short version there. Give us the one-liner, and then we're going to go back in time for a second.
One-liner. So my opinion is that the startup culture centered around Silicon Valley's universe biases startups and entrepreneurs, even ones who aren't part of that startup world, to make a lot of dumb mistakes and to do a lot of dumb things that we shouldn't be doing. And Lost and Founder is here to try and dismantle some of those myths.
Awesome. It's been a recurring theme for, despite having, Bransons and Reid Hoffmans and, Joe from Airbnb and all, huge companies and a lot of venture folks. There's a resounding theme. I think Cuban said it best. It's if you raise money, why would you celebrate? That's your first loss.
I mean, certainly.
Cuban's he's his own man.
But. He is. For Lost and Founder, one of the funny things that I did is I looked at the statistics, right? So the United States government keeps statistics, the Small Business Administration, on companies that of different varieties and what their 5-year survival rates are. So you could look at, for example, restaurants, which supposedly are one of the worst businesses you can possibly get into. And I think their 5-year survival rates are just under 50%, right? So you flip a coin, you're not going to last 5 years. Consulting businesses are actually one of the longest lived. So people who do services, right, whether that's photography or web design or SEO consulting or whatever it is, those businesses have, I think it's above 70%. So they're doing quite well on the 5-year survival rate. Startups, tech startups, like the day that you raise money, either convertible note, traditional convertible note, or a venture round, your 5-year survival rates drop below 30%.
Wow.
Like they just don't survive. I think it might be under 25. It's just awful.
And that's part of the mechanism that you're trying to disrupt with the book, right? That's just not your best option.
Well, I think one of the problems is we all, like I don't know about you, but one of the biggest reasons that I raised venture capital for Moz and then went out and tried to raise another big round and failed for years and years and then finally got this $18 million round done and all these things is because I thought that was what made you a real entrepreneur, right? I thought that was what was suggested to me by popular culture, by business culture and entrepreneurial culture, right? That's what we celebrate. That's who's on the cover of Inc. If you want, your face on these magazines and books, if you want to be on, the hot podcasts, if you want the people that the press covers to talk about you, you got to raise a lot of money from impressive people with, these brand name firms. And then once you go down that road and experience it for yourself, you're like, wait a minute. This is not, I get that I'm sure that is what makes some people happy. But I think that it's
and
not.
some businesses successful.
Yeah, and some businesses very successful, right? But it's definitely not right for everyone. And I think if we can change the narrative, like as a culture, if we can change the narrative to support other ideas of what success means and what it can be, and stop glorifying this one path alone, I think that we can do two things. One, I think we can build a much healthier entrepreneurial environment where lots and lots of different people try to do lots of different things, which would be awesome. And second, I think we change who gets to be successful. Like, do you know how many black women founders have received venture capital funding in the last 10 years?
It's got to be less than 5% of the total.
I think
deals.
I saw that it was 8.
8. There you go.
8. You can count them on your hands. That's insane. I can't count the number of white guys who were funded yesterday. Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
That's a bigger number.
Totally.
And that's also crazy and wrong and messed up, right? And so I think there's work to be done all around this. Lost and Founder is just me, throwing a pebble into the ocean, but hopefully that pebble will urge a lot of other people to throw their own rocks.
Well, that's one of the reasons that we have several mutual friends who have tried to connect us over the last, I'd say, year or two. I think specifically because our aspirations are similar, personally and professionally. We want to, Creative Live exists to help, be a champion for creators everywhere, and the creativity being, what I consider to be the new literacy. And if we over-indexed on the creators, what a more amazing place the world could be. And I'm trying to also align with that there are so many paths. I think my personal example of I started pursuing professional soccer and medical school and all these other things and still found my way to this world. Like, that's just a testament to, like, you can be anywhere and you can make a 90-degree left turn and do the thing that you want to do. So,
absolutely.
So now we've set the table a little bit, but now I want to go back. And I want to go back in part because I want to explore what your background was from getting to here, but also to sort of connote and share to anyone who's listening that doesn't matter if you're at home in your underwear in Ohio right now, listen to this, or you're on a treadmill in Uzbekistan.
Yeah.
That there are similar elements to all of our backstory, and we've all got plenty of skeletons, and we all have our own history. But I try and unpack every person who's on the show, unpack a little bit of their background. So give me a little bit of yours. Start me wherever you want to start me, but take me back.
Sure. So I actually grew up in the Seattle area, in unincorporated King County, way out in the boonies. My parents had a house behind which was just woods. So, when I was...
Where specifically?
The Renton-Issaquah border, up in Squaw Mountain.
Yeah, my wife went to Woodinville High School.
Oh, okay. Yep. So north of there. Yeah. So, a lot of my childhood was spent hiking around a forest all by myself and watching out for mountain lions and watching frogs. I was obsessed with frogs when I was a kid. We had a big frog pond, like quarter-mile hike into the woods, and I was obsessed with that. But so I didn't have a ton of friends growing up because I was in the middle of nowhere and nobody wanted to drive out to our house, right?
Birthday party, you're like, no, it's like you live 45 miles from anything.
Yeah, so and I've taken some of that with me. I can be extroverted for a few hours, but I need a lot of self-care time, alone time to recuperate from that. And my mom, interesting enough, so she started a business in 1981. I think it was called Outlines West, and it was a one-woman marketing consultancy shop, right? Probably really similar to a lot of the people who are members of Creative Live today, right? So she would design logos and she would take pictures, she would go around to local businesses and help them get their yellow page ad and their business card and their letterhead and all that kind of stuff. Worked with all these print shops. And so I spent my childhood after school every day. I would go to her office and sort of, live there watching her on Photoshop. Wow. That was like, and PageMaker and all this PageMaker, right? Yeah. Back in the day. And when I went to college, I got 3 years in, had a big fight with my dad, and he stopped paying for my tuition, and so I paid for my own tuition for a couple quarters. This was back when you could still work a minimum wage job and pay your way through college. Yeah. Which I feel terrible that the current generation, that's impossible.
Not possible.
Yeah, not at all. And my last quarter of school, I dropped out. So 2 classes away from graduating at the University of Washington, dropped out to work with my mom building websites. Fast forward a couple years, as you might imagine, a 21-year-old web designer is not the most fiscally responsible individual. And so we went pretty far into debt. By 2004, we had $150,000 of credit card debt and equipment loan debt and all this kind of stuff. Wow. And then we stopped being able to make the minimum payments on the debt, which means by 2005, we were $500,000 in debt.
Wow.
And the logical thing to do, right, of course, is you declare bankruptcy. You're like, okay,
it all goes away.
Start clean, right? There's no more debtor's prison. We don't have to worry about that. But we had never told my dad that we had any debt. So we'd been, keeping this like huge, nasty, like the business is not going well. In fact, it was so bad that even though we had these debt payments, my mom would bring home some money to like make it look to my dad like we had a real business going. And I think I was making $800 a month. My girlfriend, Geraldine, who's now my wife, was paying my rent and all my bills.
Wow.
Right? And the only thing I had going for me was this website I had started called SEO Moz. And SEO Moz was something I started because when we stopped being able to pay our subcontractors, including our SEOs, right, we had to do it all ourselves. And so I was like, okay, Rand, well, we promised this client we would do SEO for their website, so you better learn it and do it. And the world of SEO back then, I'm sure you remember.
Sure.
Super secretive, super weird and sketchy, and no one wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole, but powerful because Google was on the rise. Yeah. Microsoft and Yahoo were still competing with them pretty heavily, and search was growing. And so ranking #1 for, whatever it is, Seattle photographer, could just blow up your business.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of clients like that, and I was learning SEO. I started this SEO Moz website, hoping to make, a lot of SEO advice open source. That started doing well and attracting clients and ranking well, getting me invitations to speak at conferences, which I could barely afford to do. I had to stay with my grandparents in New York and go to the city, that kind of thing. But yeah, that ended up turning the business around, and by 2007 we paid off that debt.
Wow, didn't do bankruptcy.
We couldn't. I mean, we couldn't. Yeah. So if we had, my dad would have found out. I think my mom was scared that he would divorce her. I think she was also scared that her mother, who passed away a couple of years ago, but was alive at the time, my parents owned her house, and in a bankruptcy situation, the bank might have taken her house. So just a lot of nasty, impossible to work around stuff.
But you emerged.
We did, yeah. I mean, 2007 rolls around. I remember June of 2007, my mom and I are high-fiving in the back room because of the office in the University District because we paid off the last of our debt, which is just...
That's huge.
Just incredible. And that same year we launched, so we had a bunch of tools that, I don't know if you know a guy named Matt Inman. He's now the Oatmeal, he's like a comic guy.
Yeah, I was like, I know him, and I think he's buddies with Brandon Stanton, the Humans in New York.
Oh, okay.
Guy.
Yeah, cool.
Good buddies with Brandon, and I think when Brandon was out here, he was trying to get together with Matt. But really respect and admire that he's really fascinating.
Yeah, he's an interesting dude. And so Matt was our developer for 5 years, right? So Matt and I would build these websites, and he built a bunch of these little SEO tools for us to use. So that we could automate a lot of the functions of SEO that were very manual at the time. So, and Matt and I were friends too. He'd come over to our apartment all the time, and we'd mess around. We'd play Counter-Strike after work and that kind of thing. But so he had built these tools, and I was like, okay, I want to share them with everybody. And Matt's like, nah, man, our servers couldn't handle the traffic, and we can't do it. So I was like, okay, what if we put up a PayPal paywall, and you have to PayPal us $39 a month to get access to the tools. And he's like, all right. So over the weekend, he did that. And in February of 2007, we launched these tools. And by July or August, the subscription revenue from the tools was doing more revenue than our consulting business. And we went,
wait,
hang on a second. Yeah. What is this? Right? We didn't know what software as a service was. I got an email from Michelle Goldberg from Ignition Partners, and I Googled venture capital. Right? What does that mean?
Who's this woman?
Yeah, exactly. Right. And what do they do? Right. And so at the end of that year, November of that year, we ended up raising a $1.1 million round with Ignition and also Curious Office. I don't know if you know Kelly Smith.
Sure, of course.
But so they ended up co-investing in this company Moz, and we started growing. We kept building software. I became the CEO at that time, so I had a tough conversation with my mom, and that was fairly intense. It was like, okay, they want to invest in us, but
this is it. actual business, and there's fiduciary responsibilities and investors and the SEC and these.
Yeah, and so, my mom had obviously been president and CEO since 1981, right? And so here was this thing. I think she felt both, pride, like, oh, my son's taking this over, but also kind of this frustration of, gosh, I'm not in charge anymore.
Yeah.
And if this were a novel, that would be foreshadowing.
Bum, bum, bum.
So for the next 7 years, I was CEO of Moz, and we grew from, a few $100,000 in software revenue to $30 million, and had sort of an exciting experience. Built a company that I felt really proud of and loved. Went from, I think there were 6 of us when we raised the round, and gosh, when I stepped down as CEO, maybe 120, 130, a little more than that.
Yeah,
similar to the size
really similar
to what Creative Live is today. And yeah, so in 2013 and going into 2014, I got a really nasty episode with depression. And I don't, I was not really familiar with what that's like, and certainly unprepared. I think no one's prepared for it, but I didn't have the knowledge or tools or resources to know what to do or how to react to that. But I did know that I was messed up.
Yeah.
And so in 2014, I stepped down as CEO and promoted my longtime chief operating officer, Sarah Bird, to the CEO role with my investors' permission, of course. Yep. And then over the next few years, I did get better on the mental health front, and developed some strategies, worked with therapists and coaches, and did all sorts of, tried everything from acupuncture and massage to physical therapy to all sorts of things, and found some things that worked for me. I think the things that work for me won't necessarily work for everyone.
Yeah, there's some
it can be different for everybody, but ended up having a lot of conflict with the CEO, a few years into that, and I think that professional conflict led into personal conflict, and so at the beginning of this year, left the company and started something new. So there you go.
And wrote a book in the process, and
and
that's
wrote
what
a
we're
book.
talking about here. So I want to put a couple of pins in there and go back. So
Yeah, let's do it.
we're in the time machine now. We went back. I think fascinating. Thank you for sharing sort of some of the hard parts. I'm going to go into that for a second, because I think there's historically there has been a culture in popular culture where we don't talk about that stuff, and
Especially men.
Yeah.
You are not allowed to have, emotional health problems, right? That's not a real thing that men, obviously we have it, but we're not allowed to talk about it or make it a real thing.
And I think disproportionately, I don't know the math, but creators and entrepreneurs, it is more vocal in that world than others. And so what we're trying to do in the show, one of the things is talk about that stuff whenever it comes up, because it is a recurring theme, and just so happens that you're not alone, and that's one of the messages that we want to send. So you mentioned a handful of strategies. You tried a bunch of stuff. That's after you figured out that you were not doing well, and chemically and any otherwise depressed. What were some of the things that you felt like worked to help you uncork some of the challenge?
Sure, yeah. I think that one of the biggest things certainly was sleep.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing for me to recommend, because it is so incredibly hard to sleep when you have severe anxiety and depression and those kinds of things. But some drug stuff helped me on that front, and that was worthwhile. And I certainly urge folks who are comfortable with that path to pursue that. And I also, working with a therapist, found some sort of mental patterns that I could walk through over and over again before I went to sleep that would help. Not surprisingly at all, getting off of screens an actual 45 minutes, an hour before I went to sleep, or before I tried to go to sleep, was a big deal, and could help me a lot. And then I'm actually someone for whom ZQL works really well. So I was thrilled when that product came out because then I was like, oh, great, I don't have to buy NyQuil anymore.
ZQL is basically
like
NyQuil without the drug part.
Without the cold medicine.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just the part that makes you sleepy about it.
Yeah.
So those things all helped. Physical therapy was actually big for me too.
Moving the body.
Yeah, I got a Fitbit, and I know this is not true for everyone, but for me, this, I'm a little bit of an OCD kind of person, and the Fitbit, hitting the 10,000 steps, hitting the 30 minutes of elevated heart rate exercise, all that kind of stuff, really did help me quite a bit.
This is a theme that that sleep has been a huge theme in the show, not just for entrepreneurs and like go get 'em types, but as a tool to relieve anxiety and depression and stress. Sleep and exercise and eating well and surprise, right? These are the things.
I'm totally shocked. I can't believe all the things that. But I think the thing that I dislike, and this goes back to our earlier conversation about Silicon Valley sort of tropes and biases. I mean the glorification of the I don't sleep, I work all the time. There's nothing in my life except work. That's literally not just terrible for us, but it's also proven to be ineffective for people getting good work done.
Yeah.
It is not the case for 99% of us that the hours that we work between hour 45 in a week and hour 80 in a week do anything but negatively detract from your business's outcome.
Or the next week or the week after.
So you get into a nightmarish thing. I remember at one point during, I think it was 2013 or 2014, some things were not going great with Moz. Our growth rate had sort of slowed from 100% year over year to 50, 55%, which is still great, I know, but it's one of those I felt that very strongly, right? I was like, this declining growth rate is my fault, and I need to step it up. And so I took away my this thing called anti-work night, where I had one night a week where I didn't do any work, right? I'd get off at 5 p.m. and that was like it for the night.
Yep.
And I remember one of my employees emailed me and was like, yeah, that's probably a good idea given where we are. Like, you need to
Get
step
back.
And that is probably the dumbest thing I did. I should have made 4 anti-work nights.
Yeah.
That almost definitely would have been better for me and better for the business.
It's fascinating how the narratives have sort of reared their heads at different times, and now we're seeing a huge backlash. I mean, I was one of those people that I never glorified it, but I stated it, and it seemed to me to be fact. But what it was is I had a lot of passion for what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so when you're working on something that you love, then you're happy to defer sleep because there's not enough hours in the day for you to do all the exciting stuff. That's the way that I looked at it. And then only recently, probably in about 2016, I shifted gears at the suggestion of a lot of my peers that, hey, try getting more than 5 hours of sleep. It's going to be awesome. And it was incredible. My health, because when you're invigorated by work and you're only sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, it's over time that actually taxes your system. Of course, different people are different, but over sustained periods of time, like we're capable of a lot as a human, but that erodes that capability pretty quickly. So I had fallen into that trap as well.
And your decision making, I mean, statistically speaking, right? Like you go in and take just general logic questionnaires and, try and sort out this social situation and what you should do correctly. And
it's something along the lines of being drunk, I think.
Yeah. Right. And so, you think, well, I'm working really hard and so I am a good CEO. And in fact, when you're getting, less than 8.5 hours of sleep, you are harming your business. Statistically speaking, harming your business, because the primary job of a CEO is not get this specific piece of work done, right? It's not crank out this code or, edit this video or whatever it is. It is make good decisions.
Yeah.
Be good to your people, right? Hire correctly. Help upgrade your team.
And I think it's also, one of the things I want to caution against is it's not like you don't have to work hard in order to succeed. Like, it's what are you doing with all the other time, which is like if you're spending it in front of screens that are unhealthy, or if you're crushing, entire seasons of Lost or whatever the thing is. And I find that it's not about not sleeping. It's about how can you set up a framework for yourself where you're able to get enough sleep and eat good. And that's why I track 10 behaviors that I try and do every day. One of them is to not do that other stuff and to get sleep. And I feel like I'm working harder now than ever before.
And how much did you really need to know about season 9 of Lost?
I'm not a TV person, so I need to know zero.
I don't actually know if there was a season 9
Yeah, me neither.
of
I
Lost.
know nothing. I don't even know what you said. It just sounded like blah, 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 blah to me. Lost. But I think the point, that's one of the reasons I'm sort of trying to put an exclamation point on this, is it's not like we're saying don't work hard.
No,
because it's a requirement in order to be successful that you put forth effort.
Yeah.
But there's smart effort, and there are the other things that you cut out in your life, and sleep is not one of those things. Nor is this other list of like taking good care of yourself.
Yeah, and I think another thing I worry about tremendously is so after I wrote this book, and it came out maybe 45, 50 days ago, something like that. I've been getting all these emails from people who read it, which is super rewarding and feels awesome. But the stories that people have about not just their own sacrifices and losses, but the people in their lives, right?
Yeah.
The
spouses and family members.
Yeah.
And,
my mom had cancer, and I thought the right thing to do was bury my head in my company. My husband was telling me that he needed more time from me, and I invested that in my business instead, and my marriage collapsed. And now what's going on with my kids, and
huge, deep, real stuff.
Yeah, what is the point? Who are you doing this for?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
well, let's assume that people's intentions are in the right place. Like, you want to build a business, and I'm not trying to judge. Let's just assume that people's hearts and minds are in the right place and focus on the thing that they want to do. How did you, and I think one of the reasons I'm asking this question is to trying to get how you decided that SEO was interesting, or helping people describe or find their tribe, or help drive traffic or build audience. And especially now with SparkToro, like what's the zhuzh? Because I think it's easy to tell people that when you find the thing that you're supposed to be doing, it just feels awesome. It's like the skids have been greased and away you go. But what you said in your your historical look back was like, it was necessity for survival of our business. And I do find that, but presumably you liked it because you did more. So how did you decide that you liked something?
Yeah, I think that accidentally stumbling into things by having a diverse group of people in your life and doing lots of different things, especially when you're young, or when you have the freedom to be able to potentially pursue an entrepreneurial journey, is an awesome way to do that, right? Yeah. So I fell into SEO by necessity, and then found that I loved aspects of it. I actually hated other aspects of it, but I knew that at the core of that hate was passion.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I despise that this is how this is done. Can I change that? Can I make that into something else, right? So, one of the things that was true in the early SEO world was that lots of consultants, lots of people who were experts in the field were very secretive about their knowledge because they believed it to be their secret sauce, right? Like, I can't tell you how or why I know that this thing that we're going to do is going to make your rankings go up, because that's how I sell my services, right? And of course, anyone who tries to do that to you in a consulting role, like you should be pretty skeptical. But in SEO, that was really common. And I hated it. So whenever I found something that worked, I would blog about it.
Yeah.
I would put it up on SEO Moz, and I would make it public. And as a result, I made a lot of friends and a lot of enemies, right? And I think it was sort of interesting to see how over time, of course, like any maturing industry, it changed, right? As Google became this behemoth that dominates, around the world, there were a lot more people who started blogging and writing more openly about SEO and how it works. Google themselves became more open about it. But that, I think that passion for making things transparent is what gave me a career.
Yeah. It's very similar to mine with photography, for what it's worth. I think that's one of the reasons that TA, our mutual friend, was like, you guys basically sort of pulled the wool off for a lot of people in respective industries. And so what I'd like to hear about, so you talked about finding passion, and the passion is really for making things transparent, and in a world that hadn't seen transparency around SEO, for example. I want to shift the discussion a little bit, and I might be taking a liberty here, so forgive me if I do, but the term SEO, not a sexy term.
So true.
So true, not a sexy term.
So true.
But let's refresh it, and I want to connect a thread from what SEO, I'm just going to put my own, I'm going to ascribe conceptually, it's like helping people find you on the internet, which in a growingly complex internet and culture becoming more complex, that is more important now than ever before. And if you go back to trace your roots in non-sexy SEO, we're subbing in helping people find you on the internet, to this new arc that you're working on now is not only helping people find you on the internet, but you finding other people.
Yeah.
So talk to me, because to me this is a core thing that this show should elevate, that our conversation should help people understand what they need to know in order to become successful, because they want to create things and help people see their creations for whatever purpose, whether it's to make money or to, unlock potential in human beings around the world.
Share their art,
or to just share their art and have an impact, to help, people get help or whatever. There's a million, we're just going to assume they're all virtuous. Tell me what you think these people should be doing, and be specific. Don't be afraid to. Don't overqualify your answers.
Sure.
Tell us, like, if you're thinking I'm a creator and I'm starting a business or whatever, like, how am I supposed to think? And your tool's not out yet. The new company.
So,
like,
I mean, the biggest
it's today.
thing,
Help me.
The biggest mistake that I see people making is that, especially creatives and folks who sort of are solo business owners or small business owners, is they try and build their platform on someone else's land. Meaning, you go out there and you say, oh, well, Facebook is how I get a lot of my traffic. So my Facebook page is where I'm going to invest a bunch of my energy or effort. Or, I make beautiful visual things. I'm going to make Instagram my primary channel. Or I'm a writer and, Twitter is how I connect, and I'm going to make my Twitter account my primary place. That is fundamentally a mistake. And I cannot recommend highly enough that you register your own website, start putting your work, whatever it is, on your own website, in your own user experience, in your own design and package, and using these other channels, leveraging these other channels, whichever ones make sense, as ways to draw people back to your site, and making the two things that you try and capture be visits to your website, hopefully people who come back again and again, and giving them a reason to, and email addresses. Those two are vast. I literally would take 10 email addresses from potential customers and customers of mine over 1,000 more Twitter followers, 1,000 more Instagram followers, which might sound crazy to some people, but I guarantee that is a better return on your investment for your own ability to market and to reach people, because an email address is such a stronger connection. There's so many more things you can do through marketing, and many people might not know about them. So if you have an email address, you can use a tool like Full Contact to plug that email address in and to here are all the social profiles, and now I can get a lot of demographic data and I get a lot of statistical data about who my audience is. If you have an email address, you can now reach out to those people. Email open rates, even for pretty bad email newsletters, are still between 5 and 15%. Facebook reach numbers are between 0.3 and 0.7%. So which one are you going to take? Instagram has the highest. I think it's 4%. You know, an average of 4% of the people who follow you on Instagram will see any given
feed.
You know, picture that you share or a story that you share. Oh, God, 4%. And that's going down, right?
Yeah.
Because, of course, these businesses, they're not trying, Instagram and Facebook are not there to promote you. They're there to promote Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, I would strongly urge folks to do that. I think another really good thing to think about is having a great answer to the question anytime you build something or launch something, whether that is your own website or work that you're doing, a blog post that you've written, a new project you're putting up, a new tool you've created, is to ask the question, who will help me amplify this and why? And if you have a great answer to that is, here is a specific list of 20 people who are influential to the audience that I want to reach, and I have some connection to them, or they care deeply about this issue. I know that they've amplified stuff in the past. They've seen this before it launched, and they told me it was awesome, and that they want to help share it. Fantastic. That is the answer that you want to that question. You have that. A lot of the things that you do will be very successful compared to, I think, unfortunately, there's sort of a marketing obsession with, I'm going to put this out and I hope it goes viral. Oh, man.
Yes.
That's
said no one who ever built a business
well, and the problem
sustainably over time.
Yeah, exactly. The problem is that there's a few outliers, every month, every year, who do have something that goes viral. And that's what gets press, and that's what gets amplification, and that's what sort of earns our attention. And then we think, oh, that must be the way to do it. And that is not the way. The way to build a great sort of marketing machine is to have a flywheel. And a flywheel, fundamentally, right? So it's this, this machine.
Yeah, I understand it, but for the folks at home.
Machine, right, from the
sure
industrial age, right? And it's this giant wheel. It's extremely heavy. And, electricity would come into it and the flywheel would start turning, and then it would turn faster and faster. And once it gets going, it's going on inertia, right? And so that now you can generate electricity from it, okay. But in a marketing sense, the problem is turning that flywheel initially, right? Getting your marketing going, whatever kind of marketing you're doing, content marketing, or social media marketing, or influencer marketing, or email, or advertising, right? Whatever you might be doing, events. Getting that turning is insanely hard. I mean, you know this well, right? Creative Live, the first few revolutions, getting the first 1,000 customers was so much harder than getting the next 1,000 customers today.
Yeah.
Right? And that's because of inertia. Now the Creative Live marketing flywheel is turning. And so I think that recognizing that and then getting comfortable with this idea that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to put in a tremendous amount of energy to turn that flywheel initially, to find the mechanisms that'll create growth for me, as opposed to, I'll throw this out there and see if it works. Throw that out there and see if it works. Toss this out there. That would be my big picture advice. And then we can certainly get into other things like, if you would like to rank number 1 in Google, I can also talk about that.
Sure. Well, I want to touch on that. That is, I think that is a valuable pursuit. I want to talk about it generally one more time on a slightly different axis before we go into the specifics. So generally, knowing that the tools that we use to point people are owned by other folks. I don't think you're saying don't use those channels.
No, absolutely use them.
Right.
But use them to bring people to places that you own, your website, your email list. Don't use them as the central hub, right? So whenever I go to a restaurant and I see them like, oh, follow us on Facebook and get a discount. Ask for my email address to get that discount.
Yeah.
I will open that email with 10, 100 times more likely to open that email than I am to check your Facebook page or to ever see your Facebook messages in my feed.
Yeah, even if I did decide to follow your Facebook feed, right? I'm not going to see those messages.
Right.
Okay, so I think I'm going to try and make a counterpoint here. So what we see in pop culture is people who have substantial followings and they have attributed doing great work to build that following on say they're a YouTuber, for example,
Yeah.
Which is a very real thing, and it's a way to have a job now in a way it wasn't before. Is it that you're suggesting that people don't aspire to be a YouTuber because that is a 1/50th of 1% outcome? Or is it that you aspire people to, like, what is it? What kind of business? Maybe this is a little bit too leading.
Sure.
But like,
No.
I guess this is what I want people, like, what do you want to build a business? Like, what does that business want to be? What do you want to wake up and do every day? And then there's all these other channels. And if by accident, like my influence socially, purely accidental. I wanted to build a great photography business. And I started sharing stories about it. And I just turned around, oh my gosh, I have 1 million followers across all these channels. Accidental.
Yep.
Helpful. But what about, I'm trying to decide if telling people, I've had the idea that telling people to chase social status online as the end in itself is potentially catastrophic. I want to know your point of view, throw rocks at what I'm saying or validate.
Yeah. So I think that it is, if your goal is to become someone who is well known and well regarded and well followed, leveraging multiple networks and building your base on in a home that you own, right, which is a website and email,
Sure.
is the wisest possible way you can do that. And that does not mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't consider your YouTube channel and your YouTube subscribers as a great place to start building that brand. What I think is insanity is relying exclusively on that and saying, oh, I am not going to capture any attention outside of this one network. And if YouTube tomorrow decides to ban your channel or decides
Change anything.
Change their algorithm for how you become visible, change their system for what is allowed to be shown. If governments come in and say basically, you know what, YouTube, you are a monopoly in Europe and we need to break you up, and suddenly you lost 50% of your subscribers. Well, my friend, guess what? If you had your own website and you were building most of that following there, YouTube is just a channel where you're posting content and potentially getting that amplification.
Yep.
But for your hardcore fans, right, the people who follow you the most, you own that relationship rather than YouTube owns that relationship. You have vastly more ability to control the level of influence and to keep that audience with you as you grow and as these networks change. I think about the people who in the early 2000s had 1 million followers on Friendster. Oops, right? Didn't go so well. Or hell, just a few years ago, you had 50,000 followers on Vine.
Yeah.
Shoot, they're gone.
Gone.
Right? And I think that it is not impossible to imagine that those kinds of things will happen, whether that's the result of YouTube changing, governments changing YouTube, people shifting their habits. That's my suggestion. So I agree with you that if you want to build a business, chasing the dream of being a YouTube star or an Instagram celebrity is probably a poor way to do that. But also, even if you want to be those things, have a home base.
Yeah. And what I find bonkers is you have to ideally have something that you are passionate about. In YouTube land, it can be making films.
Sure.
And then it's a great natural fit. But just seeking the ability to be known and therefore charge for your services of sharing your audience is a really quick, it's on the rise as far as a desired outcome for most of the people that I hear, which I caution against. Like, you want to be known for a thing. Like, I make cool films, or I am a designer.
Yeah.
Or I am a fill in the blank, because it allows you to have something for people to rally around other than just your pretty face.
I mean, I worry a lot if you can't say, I am a
Fill in the blank.
Yeah, I am a designer. I am an artist. I am a, whatever it is, a graphic designer. I am a
Novelist
visual
or
artist.
philosopher.
Yeah, exactly. Those kinds of things. And I'm well known for that, as opposed to I'm well known on this particular network, which controls my destiny exclusively.
Yeah.
Whew, and you don't own that network. You're not a shareholder there. You don't get to vote at the board meetings, right?
Yeah.
You're not a lobbyist there. That's dangerous, my friend.
Yeah. All right. So now tell me how to get on the front page of Google.
Sure,
So
sure.
we're other,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we're just
So
gonna,
Google and YouTube actually have a lot of similarities in terms of how the ranking systems work. There's lots of differences, but Google in particular, so the organic results are driven largely by just a few inputs. So it is how authoritative and well-known is your website, and that relies a lot on who links to your website. So other people linking to your website from their own websites tends to enhance your importance in Google's eyes. The more important the people who are linking to you, the better, right? If you can get a link from the New York Times or from, Randon Chase's shadysneakers.info, you should go for the New York Times, right? That's where you want that link. Another big piece of that is certainly using the words and phrases that people search for. So, if, for example, you are a graphic designer and lots of people are searching for, graphic design Seattle, but you want to be creative, and so you've chosen to describe yourself with these other words and phrases. You're like, no, I'm a
holistic.
I'm a technical master of visual turn 2D. Oh no. Like that's what, you want to have your unique brand. I totally get it, but no one searches in that way. One of my favorite examples was actually, this is years ago, but the New York Times, there were tons of people. Do you remember this airplane landed in the Hudson River?
Yes, of course.
Right, and they made a movie about it. Captain, was it like Sully J. Sullenberger or something like that? Yeah.
Played by Tom Hanks.
Yeah, played by Tom Hanks, right. And, so lands in the Hudson River, and this was one of the New York Times' wake-up calls on SEO, because they wrote something to the effect of, a creative headline like plane lands in the river and, captain saves the crew, that kind of thing. And of course, the Washington Post wrote Hudson River plane crash averted, right? And what is everyone searching for, right? Hundreds of thousands, millions of people that day are searching for Hudson River plane crash, right? And Washington Post outranks the New York Times. The New York Times goes, okay, maybe we should think about using the words and phrases people are actually searching for. So that is certainly something to do, and that requires doing some research, right? You have to research what keywords, what words and phrases are people entering into Google. Google has a sort of free tool through AdWords that you can look up. But even if you just start typing in Google, then you see the drop down, right? And they show you which things are coming up more popularly. That can help. They have related searches that they show at the bottom of the search results. That can help. And there's some tools. Moz has a tool. So do some others. Another big important one, solve the searcher's problem. When someone enters a query, what they're saying is, I have this problem right now, and I want you to solve it for me. And that problem is often bigger than just the question they're asking with the words they enter. And Google has gotten extremely good at recognizing when a website and when a particular web page solves that problem for people. And if you solve that problem better than anyone else on the first page, that is a true path to ranking if we were having this conversation 5 years ago, that would not be the case. Google wasn't that sophisticated and advanced. So that's a big, powerful part of that.
Is the definition of solving a problem measured by bounce time, by engagement, by what are some of the ways how does Google know that you've done a good job?
It's pretty sophisticated, actually. So Google is tracking sort of ongoing long-term user behavior. So let's say, for example, you and I are looking for the best sushi restaurant in Seattle. And so, we and 1,000 other people go to Google and we search for best sushi restaurants, and we visit the TripAdvisor page and the Yelp page and the Seattle Times page, and statistically speaking, what happens is what Google sees is that many of us, after visiting let's say the Yelp results, go back to Google and search again or click a different result. But the people who end up on Eater's website, they stay. They don't come back to Google. If they do come back to Google, they search for different things. Over the course of the next week, month, year, they don't perform that search or related searches again. Oh, wait a minute now.
They found their home.
They found their home. They found an answer. They have been satisfied. They don't need to ask this question anymore. And therefore, Eater must be a great place for people to get the solution. So even if it doesn't have great links, even if it's not using keywords perfectly, maybe we should put them up at the top. So it's not necessarily bounce rate. Some queries are solved very, very quickly.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to search for, you know, Seattle home price growth 2016 to 2018, right? A website should be able to say, okay, the average home price increase was 45% over that period. Boom, answer, done. I got it in 4 seconds. I'm out of there. My bounce rate is incredibly high, but I'm not going back to Google and searching again.
Yeah.
Right? And so they call this pogo sticking, where you jump to a website and then bounce back to the search results and choose something else. And a low pogo sticking rate will give you a great chance to rank well in Google.
I'm taking some notes here for our team.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a big one.
Picking your brain here for my own. No, I think that just conceptually, there's a lot of folks, obviously, finding success on the internet is an important part of being a creator, whether that's at your own website or blog or whatever. So I think the short answer, if I'm going to put words in your mouth, is that there's a handful of these things and behaviors.
And there's another half dozen that we could talk about, but we don't have to get deep into. But you can. In fact, I would urge folks who want to, you know, you could search Google for Learn SEO.
Yeah.
And if you pick up just the basics from some of those free guides, you know, there's a good one on Moz. There's a video class that I did on Skillshare and Whiteboard Friday and stuff like that. Just a tiny bit, an hour or two, will take you from, I don't know anything about SEO to, okay, I know enough to, you know, be a little dangerous to at least get started on this path. And that can be transformative.
Yeah, helpful. All right, so now again, we're toggling back and forth between past and present, specific and general. Now I want to go to something which is what the problem that you're trying to solve now.
Yeah.
Again, product's not out yet. What are the things, a handful of behaviors, not dissimilar to a handful of SEO things you need to know about where your people are? Where my people at, Rand?
Yeah. So this is actually an incredibly hard problem to solve today. I mean, one of the reasons that we want to build SparkToro is because, as I described to you the process that, you know, sophisticated marketers go through to solve this, you'll be like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, nobody wants to do that.
That sounds so hard. But if you want to have a really good idea of where your audience is actually hanging out, and this is truly important because there's kind of, I almost view it like there's these two ways to reach people. If people are already searching for the thing that you offer, right? There's a bunch of demand. People go to Google and they search for this thing. Great, SEO is awesome for you. What if no one's searching for the thing that you make? What if you're making something totally new? An example, in fact, one of the ones that inspired SparkToro was here in Seattle. A couple of friends of mine who you might know, Joe Heitzberg and Ethan from CrowdCow.
Yep.
Ethan, that right, from CrowdCow. Okay, so CrowdCow, you know, this idea is, as Ethan was like, I want to provide high quality, sustainable, you know, Japanese style graded beef in the United States that anyone can order online. But of course, Americans are not used to ordering beef on the internet. Like we went and I did the keyword research for them and I was like, okay, yeah, there's about 50 people a month who are looking for buy steak online. Like it's just, that is not going to move the needle on your business. Because people, when they want steak, they go to the grocery store. They don't think of it as like it's a commodity, right? It's not thought of as like a high-end product. There's no craft beef movement like there is with beer or whiskey or, you know, all
We're
these
going to
other
rank
things.
highly for the search term craft beef.
Craft beef.
When we put this transcript on the internet.
It's
craft beef.
not a hyper-competitive thing until CrowdCow. Yeah. So basically they're trying to create this movement and they're working with all these farms and it's awesome. Like I got to try some of the beef. It's different. Like it's truly different in the way that a great Scotch is way better than Johnny Walker, right? Like, you know, it's a massive, massive upgrade. And so we talked about this and I said, you know, I think that the only way you're going to grow this thing is by finding the influential people in like the foodie world, and not just people, but publications and broadcasts and channels and all these events and all this kind of stuff, and getting CrowdCow to be the thing that they're all talking about, right? If, you know, you go to a foodie event and people are up there on stage, if you go to a restaurant and they say we serve, crowd cow beef. If you go on Instagram and your favorite food journalist is posting about visiting farms and at ranches and getting great crowd cow beef, okay, that's how you create this movement. But it's not going to happen through search. So
and it's not going to happen overnight.
Oh no, it's a long process. Absolutely.
This is another thing that nobody wants to hear. That you have to eat dirt for a while, and everyone wants this sort of quick fix.
Chase, I don't know about Creative Live, but I was blogging every night on SEO Moz for, from 2003 to 2007, 8. So 4 or 5 years, between 4 or 5 years, 4 nights a week, Sunday through Thursday nights. And before I ever broke 2,000 visits in a day, it takes a long, long time to build. Now, granted, now that I know what I'm doing, right, it's faster with SparkToro, but
of course,
building that flywheel takes an incredible amount of time. And so, if you want to get a great idea of where is my audience, you first have to know who they are. Who is the right audience for you? And I think that means figuring out people who are likely to have a high recidivism or retention rate, right? Recidivism meaning they come back to you, your website, your business a lot. Retention meaning they just stick with it if you have a subscription or a product that's multiple use, that kind of thing, or service like that. And then what you ideally want to do is you sort of want to steal their phone and their laptop. I mean this almost literally, because so you can survey your audience and you can say okay, who do you pay attention to? Who do you follow? What do you read? What do you listen to? What do you watch? And they'll give you answers that are biased, right, by whatever, their own recent experience or a bunch of other things. But if you could actually take their phone and be okay, that's who you follow on Instagram. That's the YouTube channels you're subscribed to. This is the subreddits that you visit. Here's all your bookmarks. That's what you ideally want to do. There are a few other manual ways of getting at that. One, if you have a lot of money, you can buy it through clickstream services like JumpShot and SimilarWeb. This is what a lot of enterprise businesses will do. They'll go buy a bunch of clickstream data and then narrow it down to, okay, people who visit these 2 sites, whatever it is.
Let's assume that the listeners
are not going to have access to that. Right. You can, with SimilarWeb, they have a public version. You can do a trial with them. Then it becomes, I think, $500 or $600 a month. But you can do a trial with them and go and see okay, people who visit savoir.com also go to eater.com, also go to here's these other foodie websites. So that might be a way to dig in for a low cost. The other thing that you can do definitely is, and a lot of people do this, is they will go to Google and just start searching like mad, right? Search for, what are the popular podcasts in this area? What are the popular YouTube channels in this area? What are the popular Instagram accounts? And then they'll try and filter that by, followers and visitors and all these kinds of things and build up a big, giant database. That's how a lot of professionals do it.
All right, very general question. Art or science?
Both. Totally both, right? It is not, and SEO is the same way.
Yeah.
Both of these, I think marketing in general, that's what attracted me to it, right? Because
What's the saying? 50% of your marketing dollars are wasted. You just don't know which 50%.
right. Yeah. And I think this is why for years I never spent any money on marketing.
Yeah.
I was an organic only kind of guy, right? I love that. I loved content and social and search and that sort of thing. But this is a practice where you'll do a lot of trial and error. You're going to do a lot of muddling through, and building an audience is definitely, it's in high demand because it is challenging.
Yes. Let's talk about now what kind of content can build audience.
Yeah.
So what we are disproportionately as an audience of creators and entrepreneurs, and the people who listen to the show, watch the show, whether it's video, audio, whatever, and making is in their blood. We think of ourselves and one another, and I think of this show as in service of a really cool part of the internet, because you're familiar with the internet triangle. The bottom 90%, they all lean back. There's a 9% in the top, or 9% from 90 to 99. They are participators.
Yep.
And then there's 1% of the internet that actually makes stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I like to think of this, the folks who are watching and listening, as this is basically everybody's in that 1%.
Yeah.
There's a lot of engaged makers. And the challenge is like, well, how do I know that my stuff is different or better, or how do I stand out in a crowd, especially in a world where content, if we just think about photography, there's trillions of photographs uploaded every year.
Yeah.
And so what kind of content, remember the audience, we're speaking to an audience of makers, what kinds of content, or is there a rhyme or a reason or a pattern, or give us a framework for how to think about the content that we make?
Yeah, so the advice I always give folks around, I want to start doing, marketing, I want to start creating things that will grow my audience. And what I say is, let's imagine a Venn diagram with 3 circles. And you are trying to find the intersection of these 3 circles. Circle number 1 is a medium that you personally are passionate about, that you are interested in. And I say that not just because, you'll be able to sort of do better at things that you are passionate about, or because, following your passion is such common advice. I say it because I have never observed a creator, a maker, who's like, God, I know that I should be on Twitter, but I really hate Twitter. I've never seen them do well. It just doesn't, like if that medium doesn't resonate with you, if you are not excited and interested in it.
I hate bench press, but I'm going to become really strong at bench press. It's almost no one ever.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, or whatever the analogy.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just, you need to find that area of passion first. So find something where you could get interested. Even if you're not super excited about it today, do you feel like, oh yeah, I think Instagram or YouTube or
photos,
I think...
You're talking about medium right now.
Yeah,
so
medium.
It's writing, photography, video.
Absolutely. Okay. Software, right? Like I think I could write really cool tools and software. I think I could do really interesting visual representation of data. I think I could do really cool mixed media installation art. I think whatever it is, right?
Events,
like those kinds of things. And also the channels. I am excited about podcasting. I am excited about video creation and leveraging, YouTube and potentially my own website, website for that. And I am excited about these other broadcast forms. Like I love live events, whatever it is.
Okay.
Next one is area where you believe you can create something of unique value. So there are lots of people creating photographs. What sets yours apart? What is the unique element? Why is it not just different, but valuable in its difference? Is it something that, it has this great resonance with this audience, or it appeals in a way that other photographs do not, or it's perfect for X and no one else is. I think that can be really exciting. It exposes, maybe you're doing journalistic photography that exposes some issue that no one else is talking about, or that needs attention and awareness, those kinds of things. And then the third one is an area where your audience actually plays, right? So, going after saying, hey, I am in the chemical engineering space, and I'm really passionate about creative photography, and Instagram is one of the places where I want to do a lot of my broadcasting, and there's maybe a few other channels. Well, if chemical engineers don't hang out there, and that's your audience, and that's who you need to reach, you got to cross that one off the list and find something else, right? So if you can get all 3 of those aligned, and you can find an intersection of those, that's where I see magic happen.
Aha. So I will use an example.
Yeah.
I'll deconstruct that example. I mentioned earlier my friend Brandon Stanton, Humans of New York.
Yeah.
So would his 3 areas, well, I'm going to try and describe them. One is he was passionate about photography. He left his job as a bond trader, moved to New York to try and take 10,000 portraits. Because he was just passionate about
and particularly interested in specifically portrait photography.
Specifically portrait photography, and specifically in New York, because he wanted to catalog and put them on a map. And then what he realized his differentiator was, and this is like unique value, was that he had the ability to capture people's stories auditorily. He was listening to them talk while he was taking their photographs. And when he put, it's pretty funny, he's got a presentation on Creative Live where he talks about taking a picture, and his first picture has like 1 like, and it was his mom or something like that. And then when he started combining a photograph with a little narrative about, a little backstory about this person, that all of a sudden was like exponentially more interesting than just the photograph. So he became, his sort of value proposition was he became the best in the world at taking a picture. And he describes himself as a good photographer, not as a great photographer. But what he's great at is the combination of these two things. So that's his unique value add. So what would his third be? Is it be because people are on Facebook and people are looking for human interest stories and for connection?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that also he found, so I'm not massively familiar with this work,
Sure.
but I'm definitely familiar with his social accounts, right?
Yeah,
the social
huge,
accounts,
huge.
which did amazingly well. And also at a time when there was a rise in, you can easily combine a photograph and a block of text together into a bunch of mediums that have wide reach, right? So I think that helped. And then also turning that into, books and mixed media and, interviews and other kinds of things.
Yeah,
right?
now he's got shows, he's got television shows, he's got a really successful speaking deal. But it's really about the art for him, and all these other things have become...
Well, there's ways for the art to reach people.
For sure. I think that's what I'm trying to distinguish there.
Yeah.
So I would ask you at home, if you're listening to this or watching it, like, what is your series of overlapping Venn diagrams where you find the thing that you're passionate about, you find the thing that you are unique, how do you exploit that, and where are those people?
Yeah.
And the word exploit, I use that term in the sort of the conceptual term. Like, what you want to do is, if you have a thing, a skill that you have, like, how do you manifest that? I'm not trying to exploit any individuals. It's really, how do you maximize the value of a particular skill or set of interests that you have? Okay, so to me, we just traced a little bit of sort of the math and the technical about how you, you can get crazy.
we can go real deep,
super
later,
deep.
yeah.
And for that, like, if this has been tantalizing, yeah, then you've got so many amazing videos.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Where it's you in front of a whiteboard. So speaking of, since we're talking about content now, this
is the perfect example.
This is the perfect example. Share your own personal example.
Yeah, so we, this again was sort of an accidental discovery, but I started explaining to one of my colleagues at work.
He's a good explainer, as you can tell from this particular podcast.
I started explaining to one of my colleagues at work, here is how a 301 redirect is different than a 302 redirect. And you don't have to know much about them, but regardless, Google thinks about them differently, web browsers treat them differently, et cetera. So I'm explaining this, and my colleague at work is like, hang on. We just got a new video camera. I'm going to grab the camera. It's a cheap, crappy camera in 2007, and film it, and then we'll put it on the blog. Well, we put it on the blog. It did not perform well. In fact, statistically speaking, we did it again the next week and kept doing it to try and get better at it, and because we were sort of interested in it, and because, frankly, it saved me a night of blogging, right? I can spend 15 minutes in front of a whiteboard explaining something to one of my colleagues at work, and now when I go home at night, I don't have to blog. Oh, this is great. So I went from 5 nights a week of blogging to 4. And I think a year in, Whiteboard Friday, which is what we called this video, we always put it up late Thursday night for folks to get early Friday morning in the UK and Europe. The video series did, mediocre, not nearly as well as most of our blog content. Fast forward 3 years, we built a studio into our new offices when we got new offices. We vastly upgraded the camera. We soundproofed the studio. Not quite as fancy as this, but really right good for. We figured out how to not get glare and reflection on the whiteboard. All these kinds of basic things. And I got better at explaining things and being on camera and all that sort of stuff. And so Whiteboard Friday became this phenomenon where all these people in the SEO and web marketing world would sit down together for lunch on Fridays in their offices around the world, and they'd watch Whiteboard Friday for 10 minutes, and then they'd talk about whatever subject matter was in it. And by, I think, 3 years into it, it was performing as well as the rest of our blog content. 5 years in, it was consistently our best performing content. So it had built up this following, and because of its serial nature, I think it resonated with folks. And of course, yeah, it was also very unique. There were not a lot of places. Right? Yeah, not a lot of places to go and be like, okay, how can I in 10 minutes understand a concept in the SEO world? And I want to do it via video because reading something in text, it doesn't resonate with me in the same way. And there are lots of visual learners who learn better that way. Obviously, probably many of the folks watching this, right?
And me.
Yeah, which is awesome, right? I had this same experience recently. I started. A friend of mine asked me to play Dungeons and Dragons, which I had never played. I wanted to when I was a kid. But when I asked my friends at school, I was like shamed and embarrassed, so much so that I wanted to leave that school. Like it was just terrible, right? Because when we were kids, D&D was this awful thing. So for 25 years, I never played. And then my friend earlier this year was like, "Oh, you should play." And I started Googling around to learn how to play. I found this guy's YouTube channel, and it was extraordinary. I had this like, oh, why am I watching? I'm just watching a talking head on YouTube, but I'm super into it. And it finally clicked with me like, oh, I think I'm getting why Whiteboard Friday worked for other people, right? Because
years ago.
Yeah, years ago and continuing to this day. I filmed a bunch of them before I left Moz, and so they continue to put out some with me, and then they're trying to sort of backfill other hosts now. But that video series hit those 3 spots really nicely, right? It was something that I was passionate about. I love explaining SEO to people and helping make this mysterious world less mysterious. I was uniquely good at being on camera and filming in a single take and being able to draw something on the whiteboard that made sense to people and resonated. And this was a unique format that people didn't have before. And we had a distribution channel where people actually hung out. So by putting it, so we did something very unique, which I would actually recommend to anyone who's a video creator. We put the videos first using Viedeo, which is a self-hosted platform, put it on Moz, on our blog, our website. After 3 months, we then upload the video to YouTube. And this is because we want everyone to know and to get into the habit of come to our website to get the latest and greatest first. And then, we also want, if people are searching on YouTube, to be able to find it there. And many people did find Whiteboard Friday initially through YouTube. We want to be in there, right, in the recommendation engine and all those kinds of things. We can get that visibility. But it also meant that in Google's results, if you search for, whatever it is, how to do a 301 redirect, the Whiteboard Friday video that pops up number 1 is on Moz.com, not on YouTube.com.
Interesting. So do you think that's still the case?
Yeah, mostly still the case. Sometimes YouTube will outrank us, but pretty rarely.
Interesting. What about as a philosophy, like you needing to go where the people are? You're just saying that you develop. Could you only get that sticky because you already had a place where people were hanging out that was probably more valuable than YouTube? And part 2 is that still the case that you can ever outrank YouTube for your own video content?
So yes to both. Okay. I strongly recommend, especially for B2B, right? So if your business does something in the services world, or you're serving businesses or that kind of thing, putting that on your own site, and you don't have to do what we did and wait 3 months. If you want to,
3 days or 3 hours,
you could wait a day, a week, right, and put it up on YouTube and sort of have your YouTube channel. And at the end of every video, say, if you want to see the latest video first, go to mywebsite.com and subscribe there. We always put them up, whatever it is, a day, a few hours. And the people who are obsessed with you, they want that content earlier. Yeah. They're going to come. They're going to come to you. They're going to give you their email address. You're going to be able to cookie them on your site. You get analytics about them that YouTube won't provide. You can see exactly how far they watch in the video. Like, there's all sorts of cool stuff that, by using Viedeo or a similar service and hosting on your own platform, it's awesome.
You talked about obsessed people. I think you're really making stuff for that group, right?
Yeah.
Is that a theme for you?
I think so. I mean, and obviously I'm someone, when I find something new that I like, I get very, very obsessed, right? So I got obsessed with SEO for whatever, 17 years, right? And I got obsessed. I got obsessed with D&D, right, in the last like 3 months with my friend, pretty fast. And I got obsessed with this world of sort of finding the publications and people that influence your audience and
Finding your tribe.
Yeah, obsessed with solving that problem. I'm a little bit fashion obsessed.
Yeah.
Like I get into things.
So I think I'm gonna shoot some darts. We're gonna play darts.
Excellent, love it.
So your personally most compelling idea that you believe is in the book.
Oh gosh. So there's a story that I tell in the book about my wife Geraldine, who a few years ago, while I was CEO at Moz, she'd been having bad headaches for a long time. She went into her doctor's office. She got an MRI, and it turned out it was a brain tumor on her hypothalamus, which is like right in the middle of everything. Very hard to access, and they weren't sure whether it was cancerous or not. They were worried it was something called glioma, and the survival rates are awful for that. So for the next month, while we were sort of waiting to figure out, going through all the medical stuff and figuring out what we were going to do and all of that, my mental just existence was gone. I did not have the bandwidth to think about anything else. I mentioned I'm pretty obsessive. I have an extremely close, probably codependent, but in a very romantic, loving way with my wife, who I've been with for forever since '01, and this just shattered me. Right, I had this I think I wrote about this. I had this belief in my head. I was like, this is the price you pay. If you have a romance as good as ours, you don't get to have it for long. Like, I see how the world is. I was sure I was convinced that this was going to be the end, and maybe a little fatalistic on that front. And I went into Moz, into my company. There were maybe 60 of us at the time, and I called an all-hands meeting, just impromptu, like in our lobby, and I shared this. I told everyone. I could barely get it out. I was choking on my own tears and just falling apart, total mess. And that experience was incredible. It was so powerful, Chase. People were just hugging me and just showing all this love and dedication. And I mean, the team was stepped up and fired up and inspired. And I don't know, it's a weird thing, right? Especially when you're told, hey, when you have that personal stuff, don't bring that to the office. And, if you're a real man, you don't cry. And you definitely don't do it in front of other people. And
the people that work for you.
Yeah, people that work for you, they'll lose respect for you. They'll think that the company's in trouble because you can't focus, and all this stuff. None of that happened, right? Instead, what happened was people stepped up. And it was very cool because over the last few years, Google and a number of universities have been doing a ton of research about what predicts whether a team performs incredibly well or not, right? What makes for an outstanding team inside a company? And so Google had all these theories, right? And then they go and test them and try and validate them. They're made up of the smartest people or the best programmers, or if you were the strongest contributor on this team, you'll be the strong, and we put all our strongest contributors together, they'll do this. Or maybe, it's teams that are led by, certain types of managers, whatever it is. The strongest predictor that they found was not any of those things. It was something called psychological safety. You could get together relatively poor performers who hadn't gotten great grades, who sort of got through the Google interview process, but relatively low, that are somewhat new to the company. But if the social cohesion of that group, if everyone in the group basically said, answered yes to questions like, I feel comfortable sharing personal details with my team. I know that I won't be judged for my failures or my mistakes. I believe that I could share, embarrassing things about my work or my personal life with every other person on my team. I believe that this is a safe place for me. That, not how good a programmer you were, not whether your code had done really well, not if you got straight A's in school and went to Harvard. Nope. That psychological safety was the strongest predictor of a team's success. And I not only love, I sort of love that idea, but I love how unconventional it is. I don't think any of us think about that I know I hadn't, when I was hiring and building teams and trying to coach people and upgrade them. And yet I had this experience too, right? Where
this is a theme that I feel like I'm extracting in real time from our conversation, is this unconventional winning.
Yeah.
And whether it's with psychological safety or when everyone else is telling you shouldn't, that's when you're doubling down on the thing. Like, for example, email. It's like, no, man, it's all about 1,000 more Twitter followers, Instagram followers. You're like, I'd rather have 10 email addresses. This unconventional wisdom to me is almost, I think about zigging instead of zagging. I've used it, doing gallery shows when everyone's trying to build an online following, for example. And if that's a really powerful story from the book, I feel like what I know about the book, which is not all that much, it's very rare for me to sit with an interview and not having consumed the book. And
I'll make sure I get you on it.
Yeah. But is this me ascribing on you how you've won or how you've been successful? Or do you feel like this is actually a strategy that what is the unconventional? And if I think about it, it's a little bit of my buddy Tim Ferriss. You know sure. Tim. Just what are the things that are creating outstanding results when you don't expect them to, and how do you?
I think there's a little bit of that, and I sort of go a step further, which is, can I reverse engineer and truly understand why do these bits of common wisdom, or whether they're true or not, right? Whether they're myths or whether they're authentically part of the story, why do they exist? In whose interest are they? Why do we believe the way we do about these things? And I think by digging into that, you can find out which ones are, this is best practice. This is a thing that lots of people do because it's a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
Right?
And
we should all do that if we want to get ahead. And then I think there's also, when you dig into that, you often find these interesting, nuggets of, that's not actually true. That's only applicable to these certain types of, businesses or organizations, or it worked for these folks, but it doesn't necessarily work for everyone, or it's an outlier, or it's a myth that is propped up because it's very useful to this particular class of person or, organization or whatever.
Rule makers are by and large making the rules so that you play by them.
Yeah, I think Facebook knew exactly what they were doing when they said, hey, build your brand and business on Facebook and we will get you in front of a huge audience. And for years that worked pretty well, and you could reach regularly 10, 20, 30% of your audience. And then they were like, okay, now we are dominant. Now you get no reach at all, right? That's a smart growth tactic that serves them, and they knew exactly what game they were playing. And, we sort of had the wool pulled over our eyes as a result. And so
Any other unconventional wisdom you can share?
Oh, yeah.
Just some one-offs. We're throwing darts here.
Sure. So one of the other ones that I think I made a mistake on, and a lot of people do when they build a team, is that we end up trying to hire people who are extremely good at their particular sort of job role or function, and not necessarily that they're phenomenal sort of cultural and social fits for the organization. things like, do you share the same core values as our team? Do you believe the same things about work? Like, I think, I personally have the belief that great work can be done from anywhere at any time, and that requiring, you should be in the office 8 hours a day and at your desk because that's the place where you'll get the most work done. I don't think that's particularly true. Beliefs about who should we promote, who should we fire, why, those kinds of shared beliefs. That's not something people optimize for when they hire. Yeah. I didn't. I mean, obviously, I didn't know what I was doing. I was a kid when I started this thing. And then, frustratingly, we also make the same mistake once someone gets onto our team. So it's like, okay, you're on a performance improvement plan, and we might have to let you go because you didn't get as much work or as high quality work done as we need you to, as we expect you to. You, person who did get that stuff done, but is sort of causing lots of strife and chaos and is generally perceived as a butthole by team members, we're working with you on your social skills and your cohesion skills, and we'll invest a lot of energy into that so long as you perform. And what we should do is reverse those. Because it turns out it is vastly easier. What is Creative Live all about? Improving and upgrading the skills, the actual skills that everyone has, right, around their particular area of making and creating. That is a thing that is totally possible. That is a thing that is pretty easy. Social cohesion and cultural fit and getting people to share your values and ethics, you can work for a long time with people, you will not get those results. And so, unfortunately, what teams do is they don't hire and they don't keep and train people who lack the sort of fundamental core skills around their job. And they keep and retain and try and work on the people who don't have core value fits and are toxic. And if you could reverse those, you can get extraordinary results. And I've actually seen a bunch of organizations, especially I know a number of like consulting shops and creative shops, that basically take people who have very few skills, they train them up because they're a great culture fit, and as a result, they get them for a lower cost than a lot of their competitors, and they have more cohesion and more psychological safety, and and a team that's more aligned, and they get more done, and their margins are better.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
It definitely eats tactical execution for breakfast. Yeah.
So, what about in your personal life? What's the thing that you do that you find most other people don't do, or that people would be surprised to know?
Oh, yeah. Gosh, I mean, I am, like we talked about a little bit about, I'm someone who, I think many people who observe me and sort of, feel like, oh, Rand has achieved a lot of success and a lot of notoriety, and whatever with the, with the companies he's built and all this other stuff. I think people would be surprised to learn how relatively indulgent I am with sort of personal me time on all sorts of fronts, right? So I regularly get 8 hours or more of sleep. I spend a good amount of time on just, my wife and I having friends over and doing social stuff and traveling and having fun, and probably more than a lot of people who, work 40, 45 hours a week, right? We watch TV. I play some video games. I am not an overly obsessive but I will say what I found that's odd for me, not odd, I think this is actually true for a lot of people, but I had a hard time recognizing it. So my least productive years were when I was working the most, like the most numbers of hours, right? And I had plenty of those 60, 70 hour, I don't think I ever had an 80-hour week, but 60, 70-hour weeks. And I could get very little accomplished. And now, with sort of I think like a lower amount of stress lifestyle, when I have something I need to get done, I need to, create a great talk for MozCon this week, and about marketing launches. Put together, this hour-long PowerPoint, and and we're going to launch this piece of software, this free tool added, and all these kinds of things. I can crank those out like that. Things that would take me during my 60-hour weeks, I'd be like, oh man, I need like 3-4 weeks to develop this thing. I can get them done in 3 or 4 days. I can just crank through it in 4 or 5 hours a day, and get all of that work done. I am shockingly productive when I have more personal time.
Do you meditate, or do you have any mindfulness practices?
Not formally, but I do have. So
a lot of alone time.
Yeah, the alone time thing, and I worked with my therapist on sort of identifying just a personal practice for myself that I do regularly, which is to
like a talk track or something in your.
Yeah, like an internal monologue thing where I just go through the what are the things that I did today and this week? What are the things I'm sort of excited about for tomorrow and the next week? What are things that I was frustrated about, and can I let those frustrations go? Can I understand why I'm frustrated about them? And then the next one, this is like the help me fall asleep thing, is the what's something that has nothing to do with my professional life that I'm sort of like interested in or thinking about. So I'll think about a TV show or a game, or I don't know, some friends I'm going to see, or a trip we're planning, or D&D, right? Like, whatever it is, right? And I'll put that in my head, and that helps get me into kind of a peaceful place. So that